Alright, a while ago, I was accused of being woke in a comment on my timeline video, leaving the fact that I still don't know what woke actually means. Yeah, this comment here. BCE, what is this woke unscientific BS? Come on. Now, leaving aside the fact that I don't know what that actually means, the comment came about because I used the words BCE. I've seen the comment before, that this shouldn't be used, and was an unnecessary change from the BC and AD structure that is commonly used outside of an academic setting. So, I felt that it would be a great opportunity to possibly enlighten people as to the actual history behind the usage of BCE and CE, and how the concept of it somehow being used for whatever being woke is... And how the concept of it somehow being used for whatever being woke is complete nonsense. Now, let's start with the meaning. Most people are aware that BC means before Christ. Or at least traditionally it means before Christ. Less people know the meaning of AD, which is not after death, but instead Anno Domini, or Year of Our Lord in Latin. BCE is a non-denominational version, meaning before Common Era, and CE means Common Era. Both of these are used to functionally indicate the same point in the Both of these are used to functionally indicate the same point in time on the Gregorian calendar, which, as of the recording of this video, is approximately 2,025 years ago. Contrary to what some may believe, BCE and CE are not new by any means. Both of these were originally drawn up and used back in the 1600s Germany, and then were used in English in the 1700s. For reference, let's do a quick rundown. Let's run through a list of some things happening in Germany in the 1600s and gauge its level of wokeness, shall we? Alright, what do we have here? Martin Luther's Reformation. The Reformation of the Church by Martin Luther. The printing press was gaining a ton of traction and being used primarily for pamphlets and newspapers, but mostly for religious texts and Bibles. The 30 Years' War, a war fought based on religious differences on Christianity. A war fought mostly with mercenaries who decimated the entire country. Alright, so far? Not so well. Oh, there it is. The Baroque period, which saw a rise in the arts and literature, as well as an increase in literacy, and is partially responsible for Germany becoming a European power. But perhaps I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Before answering the question of why we use BCE and CE, why don't we first go into why we use BC and AD? These are terms that originated 500 years after the death of Jesus Christ and were not accepted by the Christian masses until 500 years after this. These terms do not originate from the Bible itself, but rather from a singular man on commission looking to put the timeline straight, a Christian monk by the name of Dionysius Exiguus, which is a fantastic name. I love that name. This man was tasked with creating a more stable date to establish when Easter actually was. And, as a result, created the Anno Domini system, Easter being one of the most important Christian holidays at the time. This was supposed to be used to bring back together the Eastern and Western churches under a singular agreed-upon date for the holiday, because until then, there wasn't one, so they were just kind of doing it somewhat haphazardly. Now, it didn't help that many of the dating conventions on which they would have to use at the present served as reminders of Christian persecutors, usually Roman emperors, and so they also kind of wanted to remove those aspects from the equation. Dionysius, along with other Christians at the time, were working off of a number of timelines. For example, the Hebrew calendar, which establishes dates all the way back to creation through calculating historical figures' lifespans, all the way back to the original man and woman, Adam and Eve. They also use ancient dating methods of using reigns of kings, calculating back how many years how many years ago something was by how long a certain ruler lived, and by doing so, being able to trace events back to the years during their reigns. Then, Julius Caesar revamped the whole calendar, renamed the months, and this one stuck in Europe due to the prevalence of Rome, and remained in use for over 1,500 years. Using the dates, Dionysius was able to calculate an approximate time as to when Jesus would have been born, and then an approximate time as to when he would have died. Note the wording here. Approximate. Dionysius, and all other Christians at the time, had no idea the exact date of Jesus' birth. It had been nearly 500 years after the fact, and written documents, while they did exist to a degree, were limited. So, he had to work with what he had. At no point does Dionysius claim to know the exact date of Christ's birth, nor do his contemporaries. They are just relying on faith and math, the two strongest forces in the universe, with the third being the IRS. Herein lies the issue, though. The four major Gospels that discuss Jesus do not agree on when he was born. After a proper calculation, there is an approximate 7-year margin of error as to when he was actually born, but quite frankly, that is not as important as determining a set date for Easter. It is also not explicitly stated how they came to this conclusion of when Easter was, an example of why your teacher tells you to show your homework, or to show your work on your homework. Alright, we're going to do a little bit of a quick pause here. Does anybody have any questions? Sorry for being late to class. You're not forgiven. Is the Bible woke? Depends on who you ask. Has any follow-up been done much later to be more exact on the dates? We can't be. The more later follow-up is the 7-year margin of error, because the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John contradict each other. We don't actually know, or have a way to know, when these dates actually took place. Because, if you could imagine it, Romans really didn't like Christians, and neither did the rest of the world for a very long time. And so a lot of early Christian writing was destroyed, just straight out destroyed. Getting writing in the first place in the early days of literature was difficult. You'd get maybe 1, maybe 2 copies of something, and then they had to be passed around and hopefully not destroyed or forgotten in that time. So a lot of the stuff that probably held these kinds of things, it just doesn't exist anymore. So while at one point in time there may have been a more concrete evidence of when Jesus would have been born, we're working off of the numbers that we have. So as of right now, we do not know. Is this a Bible study stream? No. How is determining the year of birth important if the one they're looking for is like the month at best? Because you can calculate from the day that he was born. They know how long that he supposedly lived for, and then you can somewhat calculate based on seasons mentioned in the Bible, as well as other context clues, an approximate dating scheme of when Easter would have been. Believe me, if you would know this was a Bible study stream, if I was telling you that you were wrong. Quote from somebody who had Bible study a lot. Isn't it more likely that he was born around Easter? It is more likely that Jesus Christ would have been born, I believe, sometime in the spring or summer. But it's been a minute since I've gone into the when was Jesus actually born. Is Nero to blame for this confusion? No. At least not wholly. There's a lot of early Roman emperors and early Christian figures who are likely to blame for this confusion. All right, any more questions? No? Good. Let's get back into it. But I'm actually kind of glad that somebody did ask the question regarding, is this a Bible study stream? because I'd like to pause the video for a second to clarify something. This video is not meant to debunk Christianity or anything like that. This is just presenting the facts in the case as we know them. Human beings are inherently flawed, and it's possible that things written in the Bible may be skewed one way or another. Does that discredit it? Not at all. Tracing back history is incredibly difficult, and any omnipotent deity would be aware of that and hopefully forgiving of it. Believe what you want. This is a personal message from me. Believe what you want. That's the beauty of faith. Anyway, fast forward 250 years. It wouldn't be for another 250 years that the concept of BC and AD would gain popularity with the religious crowd, thanks to the publications by the writer Bede. It further wasn't accepted until the reign of Charlemagne, the father of Europe, who made the date standardized across the continent. However, this still didn't stick. Keep in mind, regardless of what you may think, there were several religions all across Europe during this time, not the least of which was Islam, and throughout this time period, various countries were being conquered, reclaimed, reconquered, crusaded by both Christians and Islamic forces. I mean, that really didn't stop until the fall of the Ottoman Empire in 1922. It wasn't for another approximately 750 years for Pope Gregory XIII in 1582 to finally get it implemented onto the calendar. So, for reference, the terminology of BC and AD was not accepted by the public at large until 1582, after over 1,000 years of Christians trying desperately to get it recognized. Now, if you could believe it, by the time that this all came about, the world had opened up substantially. Trade routes between Europe and Asia were thriving, and real bad shit was happening in Africa and South America, and Europe had been trying to settle the brave new world of America. Differences in interests in cultures, religions, literature, technology, and histories across the globe were on the rise, and while some encounters were strictly attempts at religious conversions, others were simply done through trading goods and sharing technology. The world was a much larger place. Advancements in technology had made global communication possible, although not nearly as easy as we have it today. So, when you show up and tell all of these new cultures, hey, this is how we keep track of our dates, it's done in such a way that it is inherently Christian, and by using AD you will be saying, in the year of our Lord, in reference to the Christian God. Naturally, many people outside of Europe rejected the idea of using this kind of a calendar. For some, it would be considered sacrilegious to do so, because AD means in the year of our Lord. In other words, by using this convention, you are more or less made to use that phrase referencing the Christian God, which, if you are, say, a very devout Jewish or Muslim person, you would refuse to do. While this may not mean... excuse me. While this may not mean much to someone who is a Christian or holds no religious beliefs, for the devout, this is a serious issue. Despite this, many recognize the efficiency of having a unified system by which all countries could date things by. It would be a way to enhance communication between kingdoms and countries exponentially. This problem was solved by a German mathematician named Johannes Kepler, who, instead of using Anno Domini, instead used Vulgar era. Vulgar, or vulgar in its original meaning, meant common. This was something he was doing by approximately the 1610s. Vulgar era soon was reduced further to Common Era, and the natural evolution of before Christ was before Common Era. For reference, once again, if we are to trace back how long BC and AD existed and was accepted by the general populace in a BCE and CE-less world, it would be approximately 33 years. Kepler's first writings in regards to these changes happens in 1615. For reference, Scooby-Doo is 55 years old. The cartoon dog who solves mysteries and eats Scooby snacks with his stoner friend has been an accepted part of culture for longer than Christ was actually accepted to be on the calendar. BCE and CE would then further be picked up by academics and scholars at the beginning of the 1700s, and was then also adopted by other religions across the world as a unifying dating scheme. In doing so, they would have access to both their own traditional calendars, hence why Japanese, Hindus, the Jewish, Muslims still have a separate non-Gregorian calendar that they use for dating their own religious and non-religious histories, while also having a single unifying calendar that allows for them to more easily communicate with others across the world. While people today would still argue that other aspects of the calendar, such as the numerals used, are a part of and parts of the dating method still retain the Christian meaning and origins, this is not seen nearly as sacrilegious as it would be to invoke the name of a god that you do not worship. This is not to say that BC and AD are completely replaced by the BCE and CE, as Christians are still permitted and still do use this terminology much in the same way that those of the Jewish faith can still use the Hebrew calendar. All of this is to say, I still don't know what woke is, but if the concept of creating a way to encourage communication between cultures in a way that everyone can agree on is woke, then I am the most awake person in this room. I'm the only one here. If you're still curious, BCE and CE are what is most commonly used when dating things in a scholarly setting. People who went to accredited colleges or work in any field of history, while not forced to use BCE and CE, are encouraged to do so. Being academically minded when talking about history, for instance, is important. I'm far from perfect on these. Oh my goodness. I am far from perfect on these things, by the way. I'm almost certain that in the same video I was criticized for using BCE in, I used AD as well. Is it even worth highlighting a YouTube comment so uninformed that I made a video explaining why they were wrong? Yes. Anyway, I hope this was enlightening for somebody. I want to give a huge shout out to my primary source for this from worldhistory.com, who did an amazing write-up on the topic. I also used various articles I could find to verify claims in the initial article in order to make sure that I wasn't getting severely one-guyed. Go give that article a read, it's very interesting and will be linked down below for the YouTube video. That's it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Check my links below if you're watching this and have never seen any of my other stuff before. Just know that I'm sorry. Just know that I am sorry and do not watch any of my other content. Check out the Patreon. For now, though, we have final questions and then we will give a conclusion. Is there any other questions, my friends? Anybody else? Final thoughts? It's like teaching a real classroom, except the inner thoughts are coming out. What year is Japan in right now? I believe that we are in the 7th year of Reiwa. Because Japan does its dating system based on the reigns of its emperors. So we've had the Meiji, Taisho, Heisei, and Reiwa, I think, are the ones that we've had. I might be forgetting one. Why is it called Gregorian? It is called the Gregorian calendar because of Pope Gregory the 13th, because he's the one who finally put his foot down and said, we're doing it this way. Here in Canada, we do it on the reign of our groundhogs. Very nice. Well, we're going to call that there for the video. So if you're watching there, do all the things I said before. If you have never seen me before and you are curious about the rest of my content, don't watch it. It's not like this. It kind of is. Watch the Behind the Servant series. That actually has real history in it. Do not watch any of my other content. For now, though, fellas, big love, peace out, bye-bye.